exposed, not as extraordinary, but as an ordinary, terrified murderer.
So his real punishment isn't the legal system, at least not initially.
No, it's immediate and entirely psychological. Agonizing torment, paranoia. He descends into this state of perpetual fever, convinced everyone suspects him. Every glance on the street, every official he sees,
He thinks they're on to him.
constantly. Like that man near the canal who just throws a slur at him. Raskolnikov is convinced it's loaded with meaning.
And this internal agony gets amplified by external events, right? Particularly his sister Dunya's engagement.
Yes, her engagement to Pyotr Petrovich Luzhin. That brings the conflict right to his doorstep.
And Luzhin is, well, he's a piece of work.
He's a truly awful character. His morality is purely transactional. He openly admits he sought a wife who was poor
Why poor specifically?
so that he could perpetually rule her. He wanted someone indebted to him, someone he could constantly remind of her obligation, ensuring her total obedience. It's just sickeningly calculating.
And the irony is huge here. Raskolnikov, fresh from committing this brutal double murder,
Suddenly finds himself overcome with this fierce, almost primal moral pride, defending his sister's honor.
he really explodes at Luzhin, doesn't he?
He does. He tells him Dunya will have to choose between them. And then he issues that incredible threat. If Luzhin speaks ill of their mother, Raskolnikov will physically throw him down the stairs.
It's such a raw, non-intellectual moment of morality.
Exactly. It shows that his conscience, his soul, whatever you want to call it, isn't entirely dead. Despite the theory, despite the crime, some basic human decency flares up.
His mental state gets further tested by those two brilliant foils Dostoevsky brings in, Porfiry Petrovich and Svidrigailov.
Yes. Porfiry, the examining magistrate, and Svidrigailov, the dark, morally bankrupt aristocrat. They both challenge him profoundly, but in very different ways.
Let's talk about Porfiry first. His approach seems like a masterclass in psychological manipulation.
It really is. Pure cat and mouse. He never directly accuses Raskolnikov, at least not initially. Instead, he subtly brings up Raskolnikov's published article on the extraordinary man theory.
Discusses it right to his face.
Right to his face, letting Raskolnikov know very clearly, I know what you wrote, I know what you think, and I suspect you. All without needing hard evidence at that point.
And Porfiry's actual method seems designed to undermine Raskolnikov's whole intellectual stance.
It absolutely is. Porfiry actually admits he already searched Raskolnikov's room, but he explains why he won't arrest him right away.
If he suspects him.
Because, Porfiry says, arresting him early would give Raskolnikov moral support. It would give him something concrete to fight against, solidify his resolve, perhaps.
So Porfiry just waits.
He chooses to wait. He wants Raskolnikov to break psychologically under the strain. And crucially, Porfiry sees Raskolnikov's failure to grab those 1,500 rubles as the definitive proof.
Proof of what?
Proof of his commonness. That he wasn't truly extraordinary after all. That he panicked like any ordinary criminal. For Raskolnikov, this is a devastating intellectual defeat, perhaps worse than prison.
Wow. And then there's Svidrigailov. He just appears, right, after his wife dies.
He does, quite unexpectedly. After his wife, Marfa Petrovna, dies under somewhat suspicious circumstances, Svidrigailov even claims her ghost visits him.
Creepy. And Raskolnikov sees him as, what? A dark reflection?
A terrifying mirror, perhaps. A potential future self, if he fully gives in to his own nihilistic or amoral impulses. Svidrigailov is utterly devoid of conventional morality.
And he pursues Dunya, Raskolnikov's sister.
Relentlessly, yes.
Yeah.
It's very unsettling. But his final act, it's morally baffling.
He commits suicide, doesn't he?
He does. A very shocking, almost mundane suicide. But just before that, he performs these acts of unexpected large-scale charity.
Charity, Svidrigailov.
Yes. He gives a huge sum, 10,000 rubles, to Sonia, specifically for the Marmeladov children's care and future expenses.
That's surprising.
But listen to this detail. It's amazing. Within that money, he specifically sets aside 1,500 rubles for the Marmeladov children.
Wait, 1,500 rubles, that's the exact amount.
The exact amount Raskolnikov missed in the pawnbroker's chest of drawers.
Whoa, what does that signify?
It feels like Dostoevsky showing his utter disdain for Raskolnikov's intellectual justifications for wealth and action. Svidrigailov, the actual moral monster, casually dispenses the very sum Raskolnikov failed to get and could never use according to his grand theory. It suggests true charity, or even just the movement of wealth, is completely divorced from Raskolnikov's twisted intellectual framework.
That's powerful. Okay, this seems to lead us towards the climax, the moment of confrontation and maybe grace. Raskolnikov's confession.
Yes, but crucially, he doesn't confess to the police first. He confesses to Sonia.
And that confession itself is fascinating. It's not really about remorse initially, is it?
Not really. It's more like an admission of a failed experiment. He tells her his motive wasn't really poverty, not deep down. It was to prove his theory.
Was I a louse or a man?
Exactly. Could I step over the obstacle or couldn't I? He tells Sonia he failed the test. He even claims the devil drove him to it. It's still framed intellectually as a failure of his will, his idea.
But Sonia's response isn't intellectual at all.
No, it's deeply spiritual and compassionate. She doesn't debate his theory. She gives him a cypress cross to wear. She simply pushes him towards public confession, urging him onto a completely different path.
Away from nihilism towards suffering and redemption.
Towards accepting suffering, towards shared humanity, yes. Towards the possibility of a new life.
And eventually he does confess to the authorities. The outcome at the trial seems surprisingly lenient, though.
It is, considering the crime. But there were mitigating factors brought up. The defense argued he confessed willingly, eventually. They highlighted his poverty and the psychological strain, suggesting a state of temporary mental disturbance.
And witnesses spoke up for him, mentioning past good deeds.
Yes, things like him saving children from a fire years earlier, helping a poor student. These things counted in his favor.
So the sentence wasn't death or life imprisonment.
No, he receives a sentence of only 8 years of hard labor in Siberia, which, for the time and the crime, was relatively light.
And our sources mention that even in Siberia, it's a difficult transition for him. His pride is still a factor.
A huge factor. He struggles immensely in prison, still feeling alienated, still wrestling with his pride. It's not an instant transformation.
Until the very end.
Until the very end, in the epilogue.
Yeah.
It's only then, through Sonia's unwavering, devoted love and presence, that he finally breaks down. The great intellectual is finally humbled, not by logic or punishment, but by radical, unconditional love. That's when the possibility of genuine rebirth emerges.
So looking back, we've really seen Raskolnikov's journey from this peak of intellectual arrogance.
Right down into the messy reality of human suffering, the chaos of violence, and its psychological fallout.
The novel doesn't just ask about crime, does it? It digs deep into the nature of repentance, the cost of it.
And the limits of a purely intellectual approach to morality, one that's completely cut off from empathy and human connection.
Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final thought to maybe chew on.
Yes, a provocative question. Considering Raskolnikov's intense, agonizing pride throughout the book, and his final realization that he was not one of the extraordinary men, was his confession ultimately a true moral choice, a moment of genuine spiritual atonement?
Or was it simply the final, unavoidable collapse of his philosophical experiment, the point where his theory completely failed him, leaving him with no other path forward?
Was it redemption or just defeat? That's one of the core ambiguities, the core questions the novel really leaves with you.
We hope this deep dive has given you a fresh perspective on this truly immortal work. This week, we're in the world of Crime and Punishment, a turbulent and psychologically dense classic. We're anchoring in the harbor of a new work next week, and I look forward to your comments. Goodbye for now. I'm your host. Continue reading and questioning.
Welcome to The Deep Dive. This is where we get into the really big, sometimes intimidating source material, unpack it, and pull out the core insights for you.
Giving you that deep understanding without you having to wade through, well, thousands of pages sometimes.
Exactly. And today, we're tackling a true giant, Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace. We're working from some pretty extensive excerpts.
It's this incredible book that just zooms in and out. 1 minute you're in a glittering ballroom, the next you're on a chaotic battlefield. It tracks empires, yeah, but also the tiniest shifts in human feeling.
It really does. The agony, the confusion, the smallest social gesture, it's all there. Our source material comes from key sections of the text focusing on Russia between, 1805 and 1812?
That's right. And it lets us see these two worlds that Tolstoy argues are inseparable. You've got the aristocracy, St. Petersburg, Moscow, all shimmer, and sometimes, frankly, hypocrisy.
And then bang, you've got the sheer brutality and chaos of war, with Napoleon trying to take over Europe, eventually invading Russia itself.
So our mission today is to pull out that central drama, follow the big families, the Kataragins, the Rostovs, the Bolkonskis, the Bizhukovs, and see how their personal lives just slam right into these massive historical events.
It's not just about what happens next, is it? We want to dig into what Tolstoy is saying about, human choice versus historical forces. Can one person really change things?
That's the million-ruble question, isn't it? And interestingly, we start this whole epic deep dive, not on some windswept battlefield, but in probably the most controlled, most artificial setting imaginable.
You mean the drawing rooms of St. Petersburg?
Exactly. High society, where every single look, every word is basically a calculated move on a chessboard. Hashtag tag eye hook and initial society deep dive. The spark of conflict.
Okay, let's get into it then. Ground zero for all this social maneuvering has to be Anna Pavlovna Scherer's salon, right? It's famous.
Infamous, maybe. It's absolutely not a place for just, hanging out and chatting. It's pure theater.
Performance art.
Totally. Anna Pavlovna, the host, she's like the director. She's meticulously arranging people. The text says groups around him. That's the Vicomte, the guest of honor.
I love that description of her serving up guests like a well-garnished joint of roast beef.
It's perfect, isn't it? It shows her function. She's there to maintain the social temperature, the political correctness of the room. Everything has to be just so.
And you see how fragile that is the moment Pierre Bezukhov shows up.
Oh, yeah. Her alarm, the text calls it. It shows just how rigid that code is. Pierre is this disruption. Any real emotion, anything off script, is basically a disaster for her.
And pulling the strings, or at least trying to, is Prince Vasily Kikagin. He seems to embody what this society values most.
Absolutely. Wealth, power, connections, getting ahead. Vasily is just smoothness and self-interest personified.
He's not really worried about Napoleon, is he? He's sweating over the Bezukhov inheritance.
Completely. The old Count Bezukhov is dying, and he has this colossal fortune. Vasily is desperate to control it, maybe through his wife's connection, or by preventing Pierre, the illegitimate son, from getting it.
And his kids are just pawns in his game.
Pretty much. Which brings us to his daughter, Helene. She's like the poster child for this whole glittering, empty world.
The descriptions of her are, well, there's something else. Almost like she's an object on display.
She's called a perfectly beautiful woman. When she moves, she brings the glamour of a ballroom with her. Everyone stares, right? Her white shoulders, glossy hair, this perfect, unchanging smile.
But the text points out she's not looking at any of them, but smiling on all.
That's the key. She's got this incredible beauty, this social power, but behind that mask, it seems like there's, well, not much substance, no real connection. She perfectly mirrors the society she's queen of.
Okay, so into this perfectly fake world, step 2, people who just can't or won't play the game properly, even though they're born into it. Pierre and Prince Andrew.
Yeah, the outsiders within. Pierre Bezukhov is immediately the focus of everyone's calculations because of the inheritance. But he arrives, murmuring something unintelligible, looking around as if in search of something. He just screams, "I don't belong here."
He makes mistakes right away, doesn't he?
Okay.
Turns away from the important aunt talking about the Empress's health.
Total social blunder. But everyone's watching him because he's Count Bezukhov's illegitimate son, the one the Count apparently favors now. And the money involved is staggering 40,000 serfs, millions of rubles. So you have this huge, clumsy, emotional guy dropped into this delicate, hyper-calculated environment.
And then there's Prince Andrew Bolkonsky. Pierre seems genuinely glad to see him, like they share something.
There's definitely a connection, a shared alienation maybe. Pierre looks at him with glad, affectionate eyes. But Andrew's reaction to the salon isn't awkwardness like Pierre's. It's this cold, intellectual disgust.
He doesn't hold back.
Not at all. He calls it an enchanted circle I cannot escape from. He sees his marriage to Lise, who's pregnant, as trapping him like a chained convict.
Wow. So marriage isn't a comfort, it's a prison sentence.
For him, at this point, yes. He feels stuck in drawing rooms, gossip, balls, vanity, and triviality. Society, for Andrew, is basically a living death. The only escape, the only way to find real meaning, real action, maybe even glory, is war. That's where he's pinning all his hopes.
So right from the start, we've got this core tension. Society wants calculation, masks, suppressing your real self. Pierre can't manage it. He's too honest, too bumbling. Andrew refuses. He's too smart, too cynical.
And both are desperate for an escape hatch. Their paths out war for Andrew. Something else for Pierre will take them in completely different directions. Hashtag tag 2, the young and the ambitious.
Okay, so that tension between, let's say, calculation and sincerity, it gets even clearer when we switch locations, right? From St. Petersburg to Moscow.
Absolutely. We move from that cold, controlled Petersburg salon to the much warmer, much more chaotic Rostov household in Moscow.
It's like opening a window, isn't it? Suddenly there's noise, life, messiness. We meet them at a name day party.
And the difference is huge. Petersburg is all about pretending. The Rostovs, well, they're all about feeling, sometimes overwhelmingly so. Even if it's embarrassing or financially disastrous.
You see that right away with the young people, Nicholas and Sonia.
Mm-hmm. That secret love between the cousins. Nicholas is about to go off to war, and he tells Sonia in the conservatory, "You alone are everything, and I will prove it to you." It's so pure, so heartfelt.
But incredibly complicated. They're cousins, the family needs money. It's not simple.
Nothing with the Rostovs is simple, emotionally speaking. And then there's young Natasha. Even as a kid, she has this incredible energy, this impulsiveness.
She just shouts across the table to her mother, no filter.
None at all. And she already has this sharp eye for falseness.
No.
She teases Boris Drubetskoy, calling him such a diplomat that it is really tiresome.
Even then, she sees his calculating side.
She does. Natasha is just pure life force, all impulse. If you think about the families, maybe the Bolkonskis are intellect, the Kuragins are calculation and desire, then the Rostovs are just raw, unmanaged emotion.
But there's a bit of cold calculation even in the Rostov house, isn't there? With the older sister, Vera.
Ah, Vera, yes. She's the exception that proves the rule, maybe. She's all about cold correctness, propriety. The text says she actually enjoys being unpleasant to people.
Like she uses correctness as a weapon.
Exactly. The kids call her Madame de Genlis, after that famously prim and proper, slightly artificial French governess and writer. Vera performs morality, but it feels completely empty of genuine warmth or kindness.
Okay, so the Rostovs are warm but messy. But that warmth is constantly under pressure from the colder, more calculating world outside. Which brings us back to someone like Anna Mikhailovna Drubetskaya.
Right. Anna Mikhailovna is fascinating. She's a princess, but she's poor. She represents that part of the aristocracy that has to constantly scheme and hustle just to survive.
And she's doing it all for her son, Boris.
Utterly devoted to getting Boris ahead. She'll endure any humiliation, the text says, to gain her end. She needs him in the guards, needs him set up. We see her charming Prince Vasily to get his help.
And then immediately pivots to the dying Count Bezukov's house.
Doesn't miss a beat. She rushes over there, hoping to get Boris some favor, maybe even a piece of that enormous inheritance. She's relentless.
Which leads us to that whole scene around Count Bezukov's deathbed.
Yeah.
It's less about grief and more about grabbing the will.
It's pure political maneuvering, even as the man is dying. The source really details the frantic scheming. Prince Vasily is legally next in line through his wife, right?
Right. But the Count liked Pierre, and there's talk of a letter to the Emperor to legitimize him.
So the whole drama becomes about, where is that letter? Where is the actual will? It's supposedly hidden somewhere in the Count's big, fancy bed.
And Pierre is just kind of there. Oblivious.
Pretty much. He's huge, emotional, caught up in the prayers for his father. And while that's happening, he sees Prince Vasily and the eldest princess sneak off towards the bed, then slip out of back way before the service is even over.
So they were definitely looking for something. Trying to destroy the will, maybe.
It strongly implies it. It's a stark picture of the corruption, the desperation, right there in the presence of death.
This atmosphere, the pressure, the money worries, the need to keep up appearances, it seems to set the stage for some big mistakes by the younger generation, even before war. Nicholas Rostov's gambling disaster comes to mind.
Oh, that's a brutal scene. Nicholas is already feeling the financial strain his father's expectations.
And he gets sucked into this high-stakes card game with Dolokhov.
Yeah, Dolokhov, remember him? He was involved in that wild stunt with Pierre, tying a policeman to a bear. He's known for being cold, ruthless.
So Nicholas bets big, 800 rubles, then chickens out and changes it to 20.
Right. But Dolokhov just looks at him, raises an eyebrow, basically dares him to stick with the big bet.
And Nicholas, feeling his honor is on the line.
He does it. He throws down that 7 of hearts, the one with the torn corner he remembers so vividly, and boom, he loses. Not just the 800, but 1,600 rubles in total.
Devastating, especially since he promised his father.
Exactly. The debt is crushing. But the shame, the breaking of his word, the failure to live up to that code of honor, that's almost worse for him.
And that code of honor in the military is really complicated, isn't it? We see that later when Nicholas gets told off for accusing another officer, Telyanin, of theft.
That's a really interesting moment. Nicholas thinks he's doing the right thing, exposing a thief.
But his captain basically says, you messed up.
He does. The captain explains that by accusing Telyanin publicly before talking to his comrades, Nicholas brought disgrace on the whole Pavlograd regiment.
So the regiment's reputation matters more than the actual theft.
In this context, yes. The captain says, "You ought to have thought the matter over and taken advice." He reveals the colonel even called Nicholas a liar to protect the regiment from a scandal to avoid having the officer tried.
Wow. So military honor is about collective image, loyalty, maybe even covering things up, not just individual truth.
It seems so. It's about performance, maintaining the spotless reputation of the unit. It's another system, like the drawing room, with its own strict, unwritten rules.
So these young men, they're carrying all this baggage, family expectations, financial stress, these complex codes of honor, right onto the road to war in 1805.
And for some, like Prince Andrew, war isn't just duty. It's seen as the only possible escape.
Yeah, for Andrew, war seems like his big chance, doesn't it? A chance for glory, meaning, and definitely an escape from his wife Lise and that stifling society.
He practically runs towards it. He wants his Toulon moment, like Napoleon's early triumph. He even admits, "I am now going to the war, and I know nothing, and am fit for nothing."
There's a kind of brutal honesty there, but he still feels that joyful agitation, right? Even after hearing about the Austrian defeat under General Mack.
He still believes in the romantic ideal that one great man, through courage and genius, can shape history. He wants to be that man.
But even as he leaves, his farewell with his father, the old Prince Bolkonsky, kind of punctures that idealism a bit.
Oh, the old prince is brilliant. He's eccentric, demanding, utterly dismissive of the current military leadership. He calls them mere babies.
He scoffs at Napoleon too, doesn't he? Calls him an insignificant little Frenchie.
He does. He's convinced this isn't real war, but only a sort of puppet show. He constantly compares the current generals unfavorably to the old masters like Potemkin and Suvorov. It shows Andrew comes from this tradition of deep skepticism about authority, even as he's rushing to join it.
So Andrew heads off seeking glory in the greatest war, but what he finds immediately is chaos, confusion.
Total chaos. The reality on the ground for the Russian army under Kutuzov is dire. They've got about 35,000 men. Napoleon's chasing them with 100,000.
After the Austrians lost at Ulm.
Right. So the Russians are retreating fast. They're short on supplies, exhausted. Their only goal, their absolute must, is to retreat and link up with Russian reinforcements. Survival, not glory, is the name of the game.
And the commander, Kutuzov, he's not exactly the heroic figure Andrew might have imagined.
Not at all. Kutuzov is old, slow, overweight, seemingly indifferent sometimes, but Tolstoy presents his genius as being precisely in that slowness, that caution.
He ignores the Austrian high command, the Hofkriegsrath.
Pretty much. They want fancy offensives, but Kutuzov knows his troops need saving. When they pressure him, the text says he just muttered in the midst of a yawn.
Huh. That's brilliant. So his strength is knowing when not to fight.
Exactly. Knowing when to retreat, conserve, wait. It's a harsh lesson for the ambitious young officers like Andrew who want action now. But Kutuzov's focus is purely on preserving the army.
And the retreat itself sounds horrific.
It's described as disorderly flight. Roads choked with carts, cannons, horses, 3 and sometimes 4 abreast. Officers can't control the chaos. It starkly shows the huge gap between the neat plans made in councils and the messy, deadly reality soldiers face. Logistics just breaking down.
We see that reality up close at Chun-de-Greyburn, where Nicholas Rostov gets his first taste of battle.
Yeah, September, it's this tense standoff. The French are right there, maybe 700 yards away, in their blue uniforms.
And that space between the lines is described so powerfully.
Stern, threatening, inaccessible, and intangible. It's this terrifying, abstract boundary. Nicholas is there trying to hold his nerve, facing this unseen but deeply felt menace. It's a psychological battle as much as anything.
And amidst all that fear and tension, we meet a quiet kind of hero, Captain Tushin.
Ah, Tushin, the little round-shouldered artillery captain. He commands the key battery on the high ground. He's not glamorous. He's not seeking attention.
But he's incredibly effective.
Absolutely. He shows amazing courage and endurance under fire, just quietly doing his job, connecting with his men. He's a total contrast to the ambitious, glory-seeking officers.
But the real climax of this part of the war story, at least in terms of ambition, belongs to Prince Andrew. He's still chasing that heroic moment.
He really is. At Schön-Grabern, and then later leading into Austerlitz, he sees his chance. The troops are wavering. He grabs the standard, the flag, and runs forward. He's convinced this is it, his moment to be the hero, to turn the tide through sheer will.
Pure romantic heroism.
That's the vision. But Tolstoy immediately slams that vision against the grotesque reality of actual fighting.
The detail about the mop is unforgettable.
Right. Andrew's running forward, expecting glory. And what does he see? A Russian gunner and a French soldier literally fighting over a cleaning mop. It's absurd, ugly, completely stripped of grandeur.
And then at Austerlitz, he gets his heroic moment, sort of. She's wounded, falls with the standard.
Left for dead. And Napoleon himself rides by, sees him, and famously remarks, "That's a fine death." On the surface, Andrew achieved the glorious end he seemed to want.
But the real revelation comes after that, doesn't it? Lying there, looking up.
That's the absolute turning point for him. He's wounded, maybe dying, and he looks up at the remote, lofty, and everlasting sky. Infinite, silent, eternal.
And Napoleon, the great man.
Suddenly seems utterly trivial. Andrew sees him standing there and thinks he's such a small, insignificant creature compared to the vastness above and the reality of life and death he's experiencing.
So that pursuit of glory, ambition, worldly success, it all just crumbles.
Completely. It's a profound spiritual insight. He realizes that all the things he valued, fame, historical impact, Napoleon's greatness, are just vanity. True meaning lies somewhere else entirely, somewhere beyond the ego, beyond human striving. The war that was meant to be his escape from triviality becomes the ultimate symbol of triviality. #5. Grand schemes and personal ruin.
That moment for Andrew on the battlefield, that huge internal shift, it sets up a really interesting parallel with Pierre's transformation back in civilian life, doesn't it? He's dealing with a different kind of chaos, sudden, immense wealth.
Yeah, it's a perfect contrast. Andrew finds insight through near death and the failure of ambition. Pierre finds, well, mostly confusion when he suddenly becomes Count Bezukov.
He inherits everything, the 40,000 serfs and millions of rubles. But instead of feeling liberated, he feels crushed.
Totally overwhelmed. The source material describes him buried under paperwork, petitioners constantly flattering him. "With your excellent heart, you are yourself so honorable, Count." He feels like he can only be alone in bed.
So wealth isn't freedom, it's another kind of prison. Like Andrew felt trapped in society.
Exactly. It's this burden of responsibility and expectation he's completely unprepared for, which naturally leads him to search for some kind of meaning, some system to make sense of it all.
And that leads him to Freemasonry.
Right. He has this encounter with an older Mason in Torjok who really challenges him, asks him basically, what have you actually done with your life, with all these gifts?
Tells him to look inward, not outward.
Mm-hmm. Seek blessedness, not in passion, but in your own heart. The ideals of Freemasonry brotherhood, equality, self-improvement, a kind of spiritual path outside the state church really appeal to Pierre's searching emotional nature.
The initiation ceremony sounds incredibly elaborate and symbolic.
Oh, it's very detailed. Blindfold, secret passages, kneeling, the whole 9 yards. He gets the Masonic tools, the apron, the trowel, symbolizing the work he needs to do on himself and others.
But there's that bit with the gloves,
Mm-hmm.
particularly the woman's gloves. That seems important.
Hugely important, especially given what happens next. The Grand Master gives him 3 pairs and explains the woman's pair is a pledge of your purity of heart to her whom you select to be your worthy helpmeet in Masonry, a spiritual partner.
And there's a warning attached.
A very stern one. But beware, dear brother, that these gloves do not deck hands that are unclean. It's a direct command. His spiritual journey requires purity in his personal relationships, especially his choice of wife.
Which, of course, he immediately ignores by marrying Helene Kuragina.
Almost comical if it weren't so tragic. Right after making this solemn vow about purity, he falls straight into the most calculated, superficial marriage imaginable. Helene is the absolute embodiment of unclean hands in a spiritual sense.
And he knows it's a bad idea, doesn't he? He thinks marrying her would be a calamity.
He does. But he just drifts into it. Prince Vasily, Helene's father, is the master manipulator here.
How does he pull it off?
Relentless social pressure, basically. Pierre admits he hasn't left their house. He feels like everyone just assumes they're getting married. Vasily keeps inviting him, keeps him close, makes it seem inevitable. Pierre just doesn't have the willpower to resist the social current. He's trapped by inertia.
But when the marriage inevitably falls apart, Pierre finally shows some backbone when he confronts Vasily about the separation.
That's a key moment for him. Vasily tries his usual smooth talk, appealing to appearances, the eyes of society, and even of the court.
But Pierre isn't having it this time.
No. He erupts. The text says he gets this fury that made him like his father. He just tells Vasily, "Go, please go." It's maybe the first time he really asserts himself as Count Bezukov, rejecting the social games. It's raw, not calculated, but it's his decision.
Okay, so while Pierre is wrestling with money, masonry, and marriage, Andrew comes back from the war. He survived Austerlitz, and he seems completely changed.
He really does. Pierre notices it immediately. Andrew is described as quite a new man. He's making plans, he's engaged with life again, he seems lighter.
What caused the change? Is it just surviving or something more?
Surviving is part of it, but the source links his renewal directly to his connection with the Rostovs, specifically his love for Natasha. He's shed that heavy cynicism. He tells Pierre he loves Natasha, and he's actually willing to defy his father to marry her. The man who saw marriage as a chain is now embracing it.
But his father, the old prince, isn't making it easy.
Not at all. The old prince is still as controlling and eccentric as ever. He doesn't outright forbid the marriage, which is maybe surprising.
But he throws up a major roadblock.
A huge one. He demands a year's delay. Andrew has to go abroad for a year. It's clearly designed as a test, maybe hoping the whole thing will fall apart.
And the old prince takes out his anger on his daughter, Princess Mary.
Terribly. He becomes even more difficult with her, associates more with Mademoiselle Bourrienne, that French companion, even teasing Mary about possibly marrying Bourrienne himself. It's cruel psychological pressure.
That year of separation proves to be absolutely disastrous for Natasha.
It's awful. Natasha is young, impulsive, impatient. Waiting is torture for her. She feels this vague fear and anxiety, like something bad is looming.
And into that vulnerable state walks Anatole Kuragin, Helene's brother.
Exactly. Anatole arrives in Moscow, and he's everything Andrew isn't, in a superficial way. He's handsome, charming, carries himself with this imperturbable self-possession, even though he's known for being a total rake parties with gypsies, actresses.
I got that Kuragin confidence, that lack of conscience.
Precisely. And what makes his pursuit of Natasha so predatory is that he's already secretly married.
We learn about that later, right? A secret marriage in Poland.
Yes, to a Polish landowner's daughter a couple of years earlier. He basically paid her off and abandoned her. So his charming pursuit of Natasha is pure deception, just for his own gratification.
And Dolokhov helps him plan an elopement. The logistics sound pretty cold-blooded.
Dolokhov again. He helps Anatole arrange everything, finds a dodgy priest willing to perform a fake ceremony, gets a passport. The Kuragins and their associates are chillingly practical when it comes to deceit.
But the whole disastrous plan is foiled, ironically, by Sonia.
Yes, Sonia, the quiet cousin, the poor relation who always seems to be sacrificing herself. She senses something is terribly wrong, sees Natasha's desperate, pathetic, and resolute face, and figures out the plan.
Why does Sonia intervene? Is it just loyalty to Natasha?
It's complicated. The source suggests it's partly loyalty, yes, preventing a huge family disgrace, but there's also this undercurrent of bitterness. Sonia herself was pressured by the Countess to give up Nicholas for the family's sake. The text mentions her feeling resentment towards her benefactors, only to torture her.
So maybe saving Natasha is also a way of protecting her own fragile position, her own hopes regarding Nicholas.
It could be interpreted that way. It's a mix of motives, like most things in this book. She prevents the elopement, saves the family honor in that sense, but the damage to Natasha's spirit and reputation is immense. It sets the stage for more suffering.
Okay, so all these personal dramas, the failed marriages, the betrayals, the financial worries, they all feel almost small compared to what comes next.
1812, the French invasion. We find Pierre in a pretty bad state before it even really hits.
Yeah, Pierre's hit rock bottom spiritually. His marriage failed, his Masonic mentor, Joseph Alexeyevich, died, and all that enthusiasm for brotherhood just evaporated.
So he's back in Moscow, just drifting.
Pretty much drinking, hanging out with his old dissolute crowd. He feels like nothing is trivial and nothing is important. It's all the same. Just trying to distract himself, only not to see it, that dreadful it.
What is it? The meaninglessness, the coming doom.
Probably all of that. The sense of impending chaos, personal failure, the seeming lack of any real purpose or direction in life or history.
And the sense of doom was widespread, wasn't it? That detail about the apocalyptic numerology is fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. It shows how people were desperately trying to find some kind of order or meaning in the face of Napoleon's seemingly unstoppable advance.
They were using the French alphabet with Hebrew number values. Exactly, and they figured out that l'Empereur Napoleon added up to 666, the number of the beast from the Book of Revelation.
Wow. And they also connected it to the number 42.
Yeah, Quant du 42 also added up to 666. And since Napoleon turned 42 in 1812, people thought, well, this must be the year his power ends, according to prophecy.
Incredible. And Pierre gets obsessed with this too.
He does. He starts trying the system on other names, l'Empereur Alexandre, the Russian Tsar, La Nation Russe, looking for a countercode, some sign that Russia will prevail. It's this almost superstitious attempt to find divine logic in the chaos. Shows how desperate people were.
Meanwhile, Andrew is back in the army getting ready for the decisive battle of Borodino. But his whole perspective on war has changed since Austerlitz, right? He's not chasing glory anymore.
Not at all. He operates with this cold, hard realism now. He completely dismisses the idea of a science of war.
What does he think decides battles then?
He thinks it's countless unpredictable factors, human elements. Is there morale? Is there a brave and jolly lad who shouts, "Hurrah!" at the right moment? He listens to the generals debating strategy at the Council of War and thinks it's amazing at what they were saying, completely disconnected from the reality the soldiers will face.
And Pierre actually goes out to watch the battle in his civilian clothes.
Yeah, it's a strange impulse. He seems to be searching for something authentic, something real, maybe the intense experience he couldn't find in society or masonry.
Does he find it?
He has this brief moment of connection. He gets sort of adopted into an artillery battery's family circle by this friendly, red-faced man. He finds a kind of camaraderie among the ordinary soldiers facing death, where all the social pretense just melts away.
And the battle itself, Borodino, Tolstoy uses it to make a huge point about command in history, doesn't he?
Oh, massively. It's central to his philosophy. He argues that Napoleon, despite being there giving orders, isn't actually controlling the battle.
How can that be?
Tolstoy says Napoleon's orders often arrive too late, or they aren't fully carried out, or they were already happening anyway. Because in the heat of battle, what matters most is survival, what is dearest to man, his own life.
So soldiers and local commanders react to the immediate situation.
Exactly. They're driven by the chance promptings of the throng, by fear, by immediate necessity. The generals galloping around with their grand plans. Tolstoy says they did little harm.
The real damage comes from the bullets and cannonballs.
Precisely. It's physics and mass psychology, not genius strategy, that dictates the flow. Napoleon only appears to be in control. The battle happens independently of him, driven by the collective actions and fears of hundreds of thousands. It's a chaotic, grinding horror that the Russians endure, which leads to staggering losses on both sides.
And after this horrific, inconclusive battle, Kutuzov makes the decision to abandon Moscow.
The famous council at Philly, Kutuzov decides they have to retreat and give up the holy city to save the army itself.
Was it really a choice at that point?
Tolstoy argues it wasn't really a free choice. It was the inevitable consequence of everything that had happened before failures earlier in the campaign. The retreat from Smolensk, the devastating losses at Borodino. The army simply wasn't strong enough to fight another battle and defend Moscow. Kutuzov accepts the terrible necessity.
But the governor-general of Moscow, Count Rostopchin, he doesn't accept it gracefully.
Not at all. Rostopchin is this fiery, patriotic, slightly theatrical figure. He's furious he wasn't consulted, furious that his role as Moscow's defender is collapsing. He feels humiliated.
And he needs someone to blame.
Desperately, he turns to the mobs in the street, the dregs of the people, trying to whip up fury against supposed traitors. He needs a scapegoat to maintain his own illusion of control, ranting about betrayal.
Pierre witnesses the ugly side of this chaos in occupied Moscow. It shatters his last big idea, doesn't it?
It does. Pierre, after his other failures, had been clinging to this dark, romantic idea, assassinating Napoleon, one grand, meaningful act to change history.
But then he sees real violence.
Raw, impersonal violence. He sees a French cook being brutally flogged as a suspected spy, and then, even worse, he witnesses the execution of a Russian workman by a French firing squad near the Kremlin.
That description is chilling. Seeing the man just collapse.
It completely breaks him. That stark, horrific reality, the limp body, the senseless death, makes his own fantasy of heroic assassination seem utterly meaningless, even repulsive. It disperses that plan like dust. He realizes survival is the only thing left. Hashtag Text 6, fate, faith, and the enduring spirit.
So, Moscow burns, the French are in, the Russians are retreating. It's absolute chaos.
Yeah.
But even in that chaos, there are these moments of, I don't know, unexpected goodness.
Absolutely, especially with the Rostovs. They're packing up, trying to flee Moscow. The Countess is beside herself with worry, especially about Petya, the youngest son who's just joined the army nearby.
They're trying to save their possessions, loading up carts with valuables.
Right, trying to salvage what they can. But then Natasha steps in.
Natasha, who caused so much trouble before, now becomes the moral compass.
In a way, yes, it's fascinating. She seems energized, maybe released from her previous guilt. The text says gaiety and mirth were in their hearts, strangely enough.
And they encounter wounded soldiers from Borodino.
Yes, dozens of officers lying wounded with nowhere to go as the army retreats. And Natasha, seeing this, just takes charge. She tells her father they have to unload their own things, carpets, china, furniture, and use the carts for the wounded.
Does the gal argue?
He's too overwhelmed, too weak. He tries, but Natasha is firm, decisive. The servants immediately listen to her. It's this incredible moment where basic human compassion just overrides everything else: status, possessions, panic.
And hidden among those wounded men they rescue is Prince Andrew.
Unbeknownst to them at first, later they find him. The reunion between Andrew and Natasha after everything they've both been through is incredibly moving.
How is he?
He's gravely wounded, feverish. Natasha finds him, and she's struck by his look, peculiarly innocent, childlike. He seems resigned, peaceful almost. He just holds out his hand to her.
Does he recognize her fully?
Yes, and in his weakened state, he seems to finally understand his love for her. Not just her beauty or charm, but her inner spiritual force, that sincerity. He realizes that connection found through suffering is the only real thing.
It's a tragic kind of piece. And his sister, Princess Mary, she's going through her own trials too, isn't she?
She really is. She's had to deal with her father's death and the chaos at their estate, Bogucharovo, where the peasants were rebelling. They even tied up the steward.
But she finds strength through it all.
She does. Despite her deep religious faith, she still holds on to a quiet hope for personal happiness, for earthly love. And she's the one who's with Andrew at the very end. She provides that comfort, shares his last moments, finds a kind of release in her own grief, repeating his final word to her, dearest. Her devotion defines her.
So while Andrew, Natasha, and Mary are finding some kind of difficult truth through suffering and loss, others are just continuing the same old games back in Petersburg, like Helene.
Oh, Helene! She's reached peak Kurgan, hasn't she? She's operating on a whole other level of social manipulation.
And what's she up to?
She's trying to get her marriage to Pierre annulled so she can remarry. But not just one potential new husband, too. An old, wealthy magnate and a dashing foreign prince.
How does she even manage that?
With breathtaking audacity. The source says she presents the whole situation with good-natured naivete, as if marrying again while still married is the most natural thing in the world for someone like her. She basically tells both suitors they need to marry her to prove their claim.
Unbelievable. She just bends reality to her will through sheer confidence.
Exactly. She's the ultimate proof that in that world, calculation and performance can trump morality, law, everything.
And that brings us back to Boris Trubetskoy. He made his choice long ago, didn't he? Calculation all the way.
He absolutely did. He achieves his ambition. He marries Julia Karagina, who is wealthy but melancholic, and frankly, someone he finds slightly repulsive.
But he gets the estates.
He gets the Penza and Nizhegorod estates. He secures his financial future. He followed his own advice, know how to get on with those who can grant rewards. He chose material success over any kind of genuine feeling. The path Anna Mikhailovna set him on.
But Nicholas Rostov, his path seems to be shifting. He's still ruined financially.
Still deeply in debt from the gambling, yes. And he has that difficult situation with Sonia. He has to avoid her, knowing she sacrificed her hopes for him and the family, feeling that bitterness. It's a heavy burden.
But then he meets Princess Mary.
Yes, in Voronezh, where many families evacuated. And he's completely struck by her, not by her looks initially, but by her peculiar moral beauty, her sadness, her depth. He senses this whole spiritual world foreign to him, but finds it incredibly attractive.
So unlike Boris choosing wealth, Nicholas is drawn to something deeper.
It seems so. He, the simple hussar who used to mock Andrew's intellectualism, is now captivated by Mary's spiritual quality. Of course, the unspoken reality is that a marriage to the wealthy Princess Mary could also be the Rostovs' financial salvation.
So fate, or maybe practicality, is weaving things together again.
Yeah.
Spiritual attraction and financial necessity might actually align here.
It certainly looks that way. The paths of these families keep intersecting, driven by war, love, loss, and yes, the ever-present need for money and stability. Hashtag tag 7. Outro and final thought.
Wow. What a journey through just these sections of War and Peace. Society, war, ambition, love, loss. It's all in there, colliding constantly.
It really is. And I think what comes through so strongly from these excerpts is that stark contrast Tolstoy straws. You have the calculated world, the court, the schemers like Vasily, Helene, Boris, always maneuvering, always performing.
And then you have the others, Pierre, Andrew, Natasha, and Nicholas, on these much messier, much more painful paths of actually trying to figure things out, trying to live authentically.
Right. They get broken, they make huge mistakes, but they also grow in ways the calculators never do. They experience life and all its terror and beauty.
And the war itself acts as this giant, terrible catalyst, especially for someone like Andrew. His whole journey is about the illusion of ambition, isn't it? The idea that one person can control events.
Absolutely. That romantic notion of military genius just gets dismantled. Tolstoy shows us it's not Napoleon's grand plan, but the innumerable conditions, the mud, the fear, the actions of thousands of ordinary soldiers that really shape what happens.
So those attempts at finding one big defining moment of agency, Andrew wanting his Toulon, Pierre thinking he'll assassinate Napoleon, they're shown to be, well, kind of naive.
Futile, even. The real turning points, the moments of insight, often come when agency is lost. When Andrew is wounded and helpless, staring at the sky, that's when he sees Napoleon as insignificant. The text consistently pushes back against the idea of the great man driving history.
Okay, so let's try and pull this together for you, the listener. What really jumps out is this constant question. Where does control actually lie? Is it in the big plans, the strategies, Napoleon's will, or is it in the chaos, the millions of small, simultaneous, often unconscious actions?
And you see how personal choices, really personal ones, like Pierre marrying Helene against his better judgment, or Natasha's brief, disastrous infatuation with Anatole, have these huge, devastating ripple effects.
Yeah, massive consequences. But at the same time, huge historical events like the burning of Moscow or the decision to retreat seem to happen almost inevitably, regardless of any one person's intention. It's like a tide pulling everyone along.
So maybe if we think about that definition of war, Napoleon supposedly gave the art of being stronger than the enemy at a given moment. Maybe Tolstoy is suggesting something deeper. Perhaps that art isn't just for battles.
What do you mean, like applying it to life?
Yeah. When you're navigating your own life, dealing with social pressures, personal crises, maybe even just getting through the day, how much is actually planned, intended, and how much is just dealing with the momentum of what came before, the consequences of past actions, yours and others.
Is the real art then just finding the strength to be, well, stronger than the chaos, stronger than the social pressure, stronger than your own worst impulses just in that moment, whether it's in a ballroom or on a battlefield?
That feels like what the characters who grow are learning, doesn't it? Finding that momentary strength to choose something real, compassion, honesty, forgiveness, acceptance over the performance, the calculation, the vanity. It's a constant struggle.
Struggle to choose spirit over facade. Well, that certainly gives us a lot to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into War and Peace. We hope exploring these sources gives you a fresh perspective on this incredible work.
What if the greatest scientific glory, the quest to unlock the fundamental secret of life itself, led directly to a lifetime of horror, death, and just profound regret?
It's a terrifying question.
It is. And today, we are diving into a classic story that is so much more terrifying and philosophical than the popular image of, green skin and neck bolts suggests.
Yeah.
We are talking about Mary Shelley's groundbreaking novel Frankenstein, or the modern Prometheus.
That popular image, it's been built up over 2 whole centuries of plays and films, and it completely obscures the rich, tragic core of what Shelley actually wrote.
It really does.
This is a narrative that's woven with these threads of deep moral philosophy, of scientific hubris, devastating abandonment, and a creature who is maybe most frighteningly articulate and deeply, deeply human.
Absolutely. So our mission today is a deep dive into the source material of this novel. We're going to trace its incredible origin, the key events, and its philosophical core. We are extracting the crucial insights from the detailed summary and analysis provided to us by the Daily Books YouTube channel.
So you can think of this as your shortcut, really, to understanding the complex genius behind the birth of the modern monster.
Exactly. We want to ensure you walk away truly well-informed about every crucial nuance of this masterpiece. And to do that, you really have to start with the author.
You do. To appreciate the depth of Frankenstein, you have to appreciate Mary Shelley. She was born in London, August 30, 1797, and she had this extraordinary, often tragic, upbringing.
Her parents were intellectual giants.
Her father was the political philosopher William Godwin, and her mother was the pioneering feminist writer Mary Wollstonecraft.
A literary and philosophical pedigree like that, it practically guarantees a life lived amongst great ideas and political theory. But her life was also just deeply shadowed by profound personal tragedy.
Yes, and that is absolutely essential context for this novel's obsession with life and death and creation.
Right.
Her own mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, died just days after Mary's birth. So she was raised in this home that blended rigorous philosophy and politics with education. But she experienced this profound chronic depression. And it was made so much worse by the deaths of 3 of her own children in infancy and childhood.
So the idea of losing a creation, of losing a life you are responsible for, that permeated her entire existence.
It's baked into her DNA. And that context of loss, of the fragility of life, is just so vital to understanding how Frankenstein came to be written. The book itself was born in the most dramatic of literary circumstances.
This is the famous story, right? 1816, the Ghost Story Challenge at Lord Byron's villa near Geneva.
That's the one. That summer was infamously known as the Year Without a Summer. A volcanic eruption, Mount Tambora, had blanketed the globe in ash, which led to this endless, cold, miserable rain.
So this group of intellectual elites, you've got Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Polidori, they're all trapped indoors.
They are. And they pass the time reading German ghost stories and having these incredibly intense intellectual discussions. And the source material really highlights what they were talking about.
Yeah, what were the hot topics?
Well, scientific ideas like galvanism. This was the notion that electricity could stimulate muscle contractions, maybe even reanimate inert matter. And they were having philosophical debates about the nature of life and death, inspired by these radical figures like Erasmus Darwin.
Charles Darwin's grandfather.
The very same.
Yeah.
And German physiologists who were pushing